Hi! You may have noticed I like alternate history. I like discussing it, making videos on it. At the end of the day, alternate history is just speculation. History for fun. Nobody truly knows what would have actually happened, but if you know this genre, you know people at least attempt to make the most educated guess they can, using the historical facts. Imagine, if you will, we're all drinking our whiskey and spirits by the fire, discussing in an intellectual sense the what if. And then SpikeTV barrels down the chimney, catches on fire, and before it's engulfed by the flames, screams out, "Nazi America!" before meeting its end. Nobody ever talks about the incident ever again. That incident in this case was a single pilot episode that aired in 2011, an attempt to make a show that is basically what my channel does, except it failed horrendously. And I present to you 2011's Alternate History on SpikeTV. Yes, that is indeed its actual name. They didn't even try. It's like having a show on Animal Planet, and it's just called Animal. I simply remember watching it a decade ago, being a dumb kid in high school, and I still thought it sucked. If you're wondering why the footage is so bad, well, it's because it's a miracle this pilot was ever preserved in the first place. But I'm so glad it did, because now I can share with the world this utter travesty.
Desperate illegals try to escape from the United States into Mexico.
So it seems like they went with the best bet in any alternate history fiction, the bread and butter.
The Nazis.
What if Nazis won World War II, and everything just has the aesthetic of a Man in the High Castle porn parody? Right off the bat, we have a few problems. Alternate history does what any lazy scenario does. Basically, it just flips the script. Oh, migrants are coming into America? Well, wouldn't it be wacky if the Border Patrol was trying to keep the Jews in? Like, look, let's play along and assume somehow the US was taken over by the Nazis in the war. Why on earth would some people only now, after 70 years, be trying to get out? I'm not even gonna hark on that fact too much, because YouTube will demonetize me. Anyway, we have a new president.
Blacks, homosexuals, Jews.
Cool it with the anti-Semitic remarks.
Yep, so while the Führer is giving his speech, the Secret Service uses iPads to find out if there are Jews in the audience.
We have technology.
You might be asking, wow, Cody, that sure is a turn of events. However, did the United States lose the war against the Nazis? Well, the show has an explanation. D-Day utterly fails. And the only reason D-Day fails is because the Germans got jet planes. Yep, the entire war, despite their lack of resources compared to the Allies, despite the overwhelming force of the Soviets. The Nazis just whip out some jets and win the war. I guess this is such an alternate history the Soviets don't exist. The Allies never attempt another landing. They never attempt to develop their own jet. The Germans just have such an advantage, they hold everyone back with zoomier planes. Alternate history is just a wonderful combination of every misconception and fallacy you can think of when it comes to the war. And this is no better exemplified than in how the Nazis defeat the US, using nukes. My god, this is just Man in the High Castle, isn't it? The show's explanation is that the Germans were this close to getting the bomb, except they weren't. The Nazis stunted themselves believing the atomic science was Jewish in nature, which is why the US ended up getting their scientists instead. But to the show, the Nazis just had to develop 2 bombs, and they used them on Boston and New York, Hiroshima style. The United States just signs over its independence there and then, and despite its overwhelming economic and military power, the Nazis, who by this time would still be getting overwhelmed by the Soviets, just win the war. Some take it well, gamers. Others don't, and they just stay in power for 70 years. So as soon as the Nazis win, they just enslave any minority. God, YouTube's gonna kill me with this one. The show tries to take a system that briefly lasted for like 5 years in a war economy and stretch it out to an entirely different nation in peacetime for decades.
We just get rid of them? What about these Latinos in the Southwest? Boy, they pick fruit really nicely.
don't be racist.
And if they don't work, they're killed. The show explains this as saying the Nazis would just keep it all a secret for decades. Nobody would ever question it, no way this ever leaks or backfires. Millions upon millions simply disappear in a nation that didn't even need to surrender in the first place. In more lighthearted news, Hitler goes to Hollywood. Hollywood is just Nazi propaganda. He throws a few baseballs, Jackie Robinson explodes. It's all the typical generic alternate history stuff you've seen before. All we need is the Nazi flag on the moon. Ah, there it is. So in this alternate world, the Nazis invent the internet to spy on people. Yet for some reason, literally all our current day websites still exist, but with a twist. Remember to go on Incognito tab before searching for anything naughty on Goebbels. Little Billy, for your research paper, always use primary sources. Don't just rely on Nazi Almanac. Sometimes people drift apart, but there's always a great way to reconnect with old friends through Fashpage.
Set. We're riding on the internet.
What a laughable show. They can't get anything right.
Any innovation or any technology can be weaponized. The Twitter and Facebooks of the world can be corrupted and used in a totalitarian way for surveillance or whatever.
Yeah, what a silly show. Despite the Nazis controlling the United States for 70 years, which at that point would fundamentally reshape all of American society, somehow the fighting American spirit just lives on. How do we defeat the Nazis? Through the power of the internet, of course. As you see, this pilot was made in 2011. Peak optimism, as the Arab Spring was in full swing. Young people from all over the Arab world coming together to throw off the bonds of tyranny, using the internet as a collective voice to organize. Yeah, man, it's gonna be a better world. In no way did it just descend into ethnic and religious violence. No anarchy that engulfed the whole region and left us with major political ramifications to this day. By the basis of the show, somehow, the modern internet as we know it, or, the 2011 version, just exists under the Nazis. Like, it's heavily monitored, but not that monitored because people can just share videos of atrocities that nobody for generations knew was happening, and it leads to a revolution, baby.
What do we want? Democracy! What do we want? Now!
They act like nobody had a camera or evidence for decades, or nobody once questioned why millions were disappearing until the internet. This is a world where there's a perpetual secret Holocaust, but you can still freely post about it on Fashpage.
Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce.
Fashpage didn't even censor anything at all. How dare they even compare themselves to Facebook? And yeah, that's the end. The internet would bring us all together to rally against our occupiers before we get Tiananmen squared. Gee, I can't imagine how this didn't take off. What a fascinating little pilot this sure was. Just a combination of every misconception about World War II and a misguided view on the future of the internet. The thing is, I remember this dumb pilot being an inspiration for my channel. Not in a good way. Certainly not. This show was so terrible, I just knew, as a high schooler, that I could do better. And then I didn't. So the lesson here is, man, Deadliest Warrior was a fun show, wasn't it? So, some familiar faces are back. Soviets and Americans. Two mortal enemies, both competing on a different stage. Fashion. Two classic plushes now back for a limited time, in quite spiffy attire, I might say. But this time, they have a twist. Now you'll never have to worry about finding your plush in the dark again. It'll be a beacon in the night, just as Marxism and/or capitalism is a beacon for a better tomorrow. Looks like someone's prepared this time to invade Finland. Probably not the best camouflage though, Soviet. And it looks like America in these trying times is thinking back to the nostalgic days. But as we all know, deep inside, there still beats the true green heart of a Fed. Both of these are available for a limited time on Makeship.com. You know the deal by now. Get them before they're gone. Okay, bye.